regarding workers, I find it very interesting what you've represented in the Senate and being outspoken about it, and also being against NAFTA. When President Clinton and the Democratic Party were pushing NAFTA, you saw the impact that it would have on Ohio, and you were vocal about being against it. Are you actually for this new trade deal that Trump is trying?
No, it doesn't do anything yet. We're trying to get language. I'm working with Speaker Pelosi, who, by the way, one of the things I say in the book is that Lyndon Johnson was the best legislative leader, most effective legislative leader in recent U.S. history, and then I sort of stop mid-paragraph and say, except maybe Pelosi's better. And I mean, she is just the best. But so I'm working with her on real enforcement language. The whole point of fixing NAFTA is to stop building incentives for companies to move overseas. And I'll illustrate with a real quick story.
Before you illustrate with a quick story, what is the solution to prevent car manufacturers in Ohio, other types of manufacturers in Ohio, moving to Mexico and doing it cents on the dollar compared to American workers? What could you do?
Quit giving them tax breaks to do it.
Yeah.
If you own a manufacturing plant in Rye, New York, or in Queens, or in Cleveland, you pay a 21% federal tax rate. If you move to Mexico, you pay 10.5%. So eliminate. That's the Trump tax law. That's one of the things it did. In addition to raising your property tax. I mean, your property tax issue that you have here. Second, though, that's part of the problem. The other is labor law reform in Mexico. And I'll give you the real quick example. Right after 5 years after NAFTA passed, I flew down to the border and went to visit some neighborhoods in Mexico in the area where they were building car plants. And I went to an auto plant, I believe it was a Ford plant in Mexico, near the border, outside of Matamoros, I think. I can't remember where it was. And the Ford plant in Mexico looked just like the Ford plant in Avon Lake, Ohio. It was modern, the floors were clean, the workers were working hard. In fact, it was more modern than ours, it was newer. And there was one difference between the Mexican auto plant and the American auto plant. You know what it was? The Mexican auto plant didn't have a parking lot because the workers couldn't afford to buy the cars they made. And that's the story of trade. If we have real labor law reform in Mexico, so that workers are not going to make the $26 an hour a U.S. auto manufacturer pays workers, although that's in question now too. They're not going to be paid that. But if they start, we have built all kinds of incentives when Mexico doesn't have real trade unions and keeps their workers' wages down. It doesn't let them organize and doesn't let them collectively bargain. And on top of that, doesn't enforce its environmental rules. I mean, it costs American companies a lot of money to clean up the air and water, right? But we've decided that's worth paying more for products to do that. We have the same idea about workers, but they don't in Mexico. And if they want access to our markets, they've got to follow our worker and environmental laws. We do that. It's still going to be a little more attractive to build in Mexico, but you won't see that number of lost jobs. The new NAFTA doesn't fix that, but it could if done right.